Are Colleen Ballinger and Miranda Sings canceled? No, they're not canceled. And if they are canceled, one part of Colleen is canceled, the other isn't, because she will always rely on her privilege and her protection and her fame and her undying love from her fans to keep her going through all of this. And she will keep putting herself in the position of a perpetual victim of a smear campaign that isn't in progress. I don't believe that the victims coming out, the people with their experiences coming out, are in this to smear Colleen. I think they had a considerable amount of love and adoration for her, and she used their vulnerability in society as young people and targeted populations to be able to continue doing what she does. And if it weren't for them, she wouldn't be in business. And she's going to keep doing it one way or another. And, for all the talk about sexism in our world, and I understand that. I understand, ageism is a real problem. I've made the mistake of saying that people of a certain age shouldn't behave that way. I've been ageist against myself. I think contextually, if we look at the relationship, the imbalance of power between her and her fans and that interaction, and placing responsibility on people less powerful than her to defend her at their cost, yes. I would say that age and supposed level of maturity play into this and factor into this. I think to some extent that sexism in general convinces women like Colleen that they are perpetual victims, that they don't have to take responsibility for themselves or for their actions. And it also places people like Colleen in a position that they are not the aggressive type, that they can hide behind sexism against them to avoid taking responsibility for themselves. I know what I say is very harsh. It's not meant to be mean, but there are things that have to be said about this. She is now a very privileged Caucasian woman who gets a free pass every time she makes a mistake or every time she grooms somebody or doesn't pay them properly or maligns them or manipulates them. She gets a free pass. She gets a free pass because of her attractiveness. She gets a free pass because she plays the victim. Battling sexism in this culture is about taking accountability for what we perpetuate of ourselves and what we do with other people who have it a hell of a lot worse. Racial, social, economic inequity really intersects that um, how it intersects how sexism affects people. I'm not saying that she isn't affected by sexism, obviously, because people are allowing her to get away with this stuff because she plays a perpetual victim in all of this. The victim mentality. I have a victim mentality. Well, I'm recovering from that, but I take responsibility for it. I've infantilized myself. Now, I didn't do the shit that Colleen has done, but I do want to stress that I have infantilized myself through my life because that is how I was treated. That's how I expected to get attention. It's how I expected to survive instead of being able to survive on my own emotional stability, my own emotional infrastructure. Mind you, I didn't have it. I didn't have it going into adulthood because of my experiences, but that's really no excuse. It's really no excuse to continue to perpetuate these thoughts about ourselves and others. There has to be a time when we say, look at what am I contributing to all of this? It's all mighty and good to talk about the injustices in these things if we don't see our own part in it. Unfortunately, Colleen Ballinger will not be canceled. She is not canceled. She will always have a free pass, a free ride, free excuses. Her channels are still going strong from what I can see. She hasn't experienced the level of cancellation as some of her male counterparts have. And her not male counterparts, but other men in this arena, and they've lost advertising, they've lost a lot of things, and deservedly so, because their privileged attitude, thinking that they can continue doing things to people and not being held accountable. And just because Colleen is a woman does not mean that she should not face the consequences of her actions. And unfortunately, her actions have had a direct impact on the health and well-being of her minor and young fans. And minor meaning of minor underaged fans, and the people she embroiled in her emotional messes and her inappropriate um, sexual innuendo and exchanges of sexual material with minors and so on, allegedly. I have to say allegedly in this. She gets a free pass for it because she propped herself up to be this queen of social justice and care and democracy. The hell, she doesn't give a shit about any of those things. She doesn't care. She doesn't care about the state of her stands and fans who are getting in trouble with the law themselves for making threats um, of using falsely using sorry of using law enforcement illegally to falsely make claims of something going on so that victims don't speak out. Come on. She continues going on these tours and shows, mocking her victims, as I said in my last video, not caring. And her fans don't care. And I'm not including her underage fans or very, very young fans who may have been maligned as well in different ways. And I'm not going against them because they're kids. I have to understand from their perspective what they might be thinking or what they might be going through because they're not somebody my age. They're not somebody with my level of thinking yet. But I'm talking about people who should know better, and the parents who bring their children to these shows that who know this. We know the dynamics of her fan base. We know who Colleen thinks she represents. So no, I don't don't fall for the clickbait and all the nonsense that Colleen is canceled. Not by the definition. I mean, unless people personally cancel her and not participate on her channels or anything or speak out against her. I mean, yeah, I've personally canceled her, but as far as her existence on this platform, as far as her, I mean, it's just a matter of time to see what happens through all of this, whether she is taking accountability for her actions or she is forced to do so by greater elements of society or structures in society that's supposed to protect kids. And of course, the United States, like I said, doesn't really factor in children's rights a lot. Children don't have a lot of rights in this country. Children aren't protected the way that they should be protected. And no, I'm not talking about protected from drag queens or protected from LGBTQIA or anything like that. I mean, people marginalizing kids or marginalizing their youth or adult children because they're gay. That's where children are not protected. Children are not protected. They're not supported. They're not given the things, the tools that they need to be able to make good life choices in their adulthood, because adults place too much responsibility on their children to pick up the slack for their parents. Personally, at this stage, if my son, if any of my children were adolescents at this point, or children, knowing what I know now, they would not be watching this creature at all. Not at all. There would be an all out ban on this person, at least in my household. That's how I can personally cancel Colleen Ballinger and Miranda Sinks. And yeah, maybe my videos aren't an expression of cancellation. It isn't really what I'm trying to um, report, although I do not understand. I do tell people, be careful of what you're supporting because I'm concerned about, or what they're watching, because I'm concerned about the psychological injury that this material could have and what she has done. It's a matter of safety. It's a matter of being careful. It's a matter of hearing victims' experiences. But just to say I cancel her because I don't like her. I mean, that's ridiculous. A person like this should be held accountable for their egregious behavior because their behavior has been injurious to people or to certain segments of society, to certain populations and communities. So, no, I don't think Colleen Ballinger is going to face consequences. Although I do agree, as a lay person, I think some of the things she did deserves a criminal inquiry, and not from the public taking revenge or anything because they don't like her or because they want to sensationalize their channels or their speech or whatever. Nothing like that. No, it's because of there's some pretty damning evidence against her. I don't know what the statute of limitations would be on some of this behavior. At least in California, um, for child sex abuse, the age of um, the statute of limitation, I think the governor had increased it to 40 years old, up until they're 40. I think it should be indefinite because not everybody even realizes at 40 that they have been groomed or that they were hurt. People don't always come out with their stories much later in life, depending on their situation. Of course, sometimes the memories fade, or places or times or things like that. But a person's experience should at least be heard. And believe me, people come out all the time in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s talking about their experiences. Now, that's entirely different than what we might expect from the law, but I think that there should be some level of accountability, and I think that is some there are some criminal things going on here, and I don't think that Colleen should be let off. It should be avoided or brushed under the rug. Now, platforms like YouTube play a big part in perpetuating this, because imagine for a moment, put yourself in the shoes of a person who has been groomed or injured in other ways by a YouTuber, and having to see their face all the time, continually produce material, and seeing their fans enable them. It is very, very heartbreaking. It makes the person feel less and less, and people begin to doubt if what they have gone through was actually real because of the intensity of the noise and the cheers and the I love yous and you're so beautiful and you're amazing nonsense from the audience, and all of the horrible, horrible repercussions victims have had to face because they so courageously express their experiences. At the end of the day, I mean, we'll just have to see in time what happens, how this goes. Again, I don't believe this is a smear campaign. I believe there is enough evidence, there's enough um, proof of what is going on. And I will tell you, if you go back further, people have been saying that Colleen's behavior, her videos are inappropriate, given the dynamic, given her audience dynamic because of mainly children accessing her material. People have been saying for years that this was creepish. So, is anybody surprised that people have come forward with their direct experiences with Colleen? That shouldn't be a surprise. It's not a betrayal on the fans who believe in her. The people speaking out against her who've experienced these traumatic injuries, they're not responsible. They're not responsible for what happened to them. And they're also not responsible for how fans feel about the situation. They didn't betray their trust. Colleen did. Colleen betrayed the trust of her fans, and she betrayed the trust of her victims who were once devoted fans. Now, there are other creepy elements that extend to her, you know, uh, her best friend, and now stuff coming out about her brother. So something is going on. Something else is going on here. But do I think any of this is a cancellation? No. She's not canceled. She's not canceled. Are any of these people actually canceled? They have enough resources at this point to defend themselves because no one really holds them accountable. No one who has enough power, who has enough insight into these kinds of things, who are knowledgeable about these cases. And nobody fights really for victims' rights, especially where it concerns a celebrity, because people want so much for their celebrity to continue nesting on a pillar of greatness and untouchability. We shouldn't be doing that with anybody. We shouldn't be putting anybody on a pedestal. We should be seeing for people for the human beings that they are, and human beings can be quite disgusting creatures.